He covers the Browns for the Chronicle Telegram, brownzone.com, where you can read all of his work. He's Mr. Scott Petrak. Hello, sir. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, sure.
Hi,
I'm
sure.
good. How are you guys doing?
We're okay. It shows you what a good defense can do for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. And, Joe Flacco talked about it after the Ravens loss and again after the game yesterday. That's how they need to win games, is to just give the defense some help and then take advantage when the defense gives you a good field position, which it did finally with the first takeaway of the year. And, it's going to be ugly, and it's not an easy way to win games. But where they are offensively right now, they feel like that's the blueprint to try to get victories. But it all starts with a dominating defense.
All right. Just give me your I know he was coach was getting asked a lot of questions too about Joe Flacco after the game. What would you do, and what do you think Kevin wants to do with a quarterback situation, knowing that that they didn't get a whole lot until the end of the game?
Yeah, I would stay with Joe Flacco. I think that's what Kevin. I mean, he said he would, but I think that's what he wants to do. I get it, right? They didn't move the ball until. I mean, they moved it, but they didn't get inside the red zone. They didn't score until 4 minutes left in the game. I don't think it's all Joe Flacco's fault, and I get that, the quarterback's the easiest guy to change, and maybe there's a spark, and maybe it is about the quarterback and decision-making, and I get it. He's the most important guy in the field. And Joe wasn't perfect yesterday, missed a couple of throws, but he also protected the ball, and to me it's more about, going back to what I just said a minute ago, it's about the style of play. And they are playing so conservatively that it's going to be a bunch of checkdowns. It's going to be runs on third down that set up punts. And that's hard to watch as a fan. And Joe said it a million times after the game. It's hard. And he gets the frustration of the fans. And, he wants to be out there putting up yards. And he knows the guys on offense want to be out there putting up yards. But he doesn't feel like they're in a spot offensively where they're going to be explosive. So to give yourself the best chance to win and support that defense, it's checkdowns, and it's running the ball, and it's punting. And when you have that mentality, then I think it's hard to really criticize the quarterback when, I think he's being coached to throw the swing pass to Jerome Ford all day long and to dump it to Harold Fannin. Even, there's that flea flicker. I'm pretty sure the flea flicker was designed to be a screen pass and not take a shot up top. So, could he have made a couple of better throws? Yes. But, if the protection's not great, I think a couple of times when they were going to take shots downfield, Joe didn't have time, and the protection got to him too quickly, so he's got to throw it away. So I just don't think it's right to dump it all on Flacco, and I still think he gives them the best chance to win right now.
39 targets to your top two wide receivers through 3 games and 20 receptions. That's about 50%. That's not good. Is it the wide receivers? Is it Joe? Is it the offensive line? Is it just a combination of all 3 things, Scott?
Yeah, it's a combination, Jeff. I mean, we know what the drops were like the first 2 games. I don't remember seeing any.
They were visual and brutal.
Yesterday.
Yep.
Right. So that's part of it. His Joe missed guys, sure. There was a little hook to Judy yesterday, and he threw it high. But, so it's the drops, it's Joe missing a couple, and then a lot of it's the protection. I mean, in that Ravens game, there were probably 8 throws where Joe was flushed out of the pocket and threw it at somebody's feet or threw it out of bounds. And those still go as a target, right? So, I do think it's a combination of both. I think the receivers need to do a better job, and maybe it's schematically, maybe it's a coaching thing, of getting guys open better. But it's hard to do when you don't have all day back there, right? So I thought Cedric Tillman made strides yesterday. I didn't think he played well against Baltimore. He couldn't stay on his feet. There were some good third down conversions that Tillman had. He drew, a couple penalties down near in the end zone or near the goal line that helped sustain drives. So, they definitely need more production there. We saw a ton of Isaiah Bond on the field yesterday. Now, he made 1 catch over the middle. I think there's still plenty of room for growth there, but you can tell that they're going to make him a big piece of this offense. But there's no doubt they need better production there. But I think it's a complete offensive thing. But that doesn't mean the receivers don't need to be better, because they do need to be better.
Can you tell me a way this offense is going to score more than 20 points a game? Like, I don't see it. And maybe Quinshon Judkins is the answer. Maybe this is something that can infuse the offense and be able to, because otherwise it's him and the tight ends that seem to be getting the work done. At least yesterday, I should say that.
Right. I would start with Quinshon Judkins, and I think he gives the offense a chance to do that. And the better he gets, do defenses, and I talked to Quinshon about this last week, do defenses adjust? And there's all of a sudden a seventh or eighth guy come down in the box, and that frees up the receivers, and it frees up Joe Flacco. And if it's one high safety versus two safeties, then you can take some shots, down the field. But you have to respect the run game. The defense has to respect the run game in order for that to change. And Judkins, if he plays like the Browns think he can play, can change that math. And I do think that can open things up offensively. They need to figure out the protection better, which is hard to do when you're down your top two tackles, right? Because that means you're keeping more guys in to protect, which means there's fewer guys out in the routes, and it helps the defense, and they can cover. They can double team both your receivers. So it's all of it, but I think Judkins, and if they can get Jack Conklin and or Juwan Jones back, I really think that would help. And then it's, the young guys taking the next step in the maturation process, always being in the right spot, always getting lined up on time. It's a million little things, but I do think Judkins, if you're looking for an easy answer, it's Judkins needs to change things and have some big runs. And then the defense needs to give him better field position. And we talked about they only have the one takeaway, and it was Delpit's interception, which was huge. The offense needs help. They need to be in better field position to give themselves a chance to score more points.
With that all in mind, and Scott Petrak joining us from the Chronicle Telegram, BrownsZone.com, the Browns ran the ball 19 times yesterday, and 18 of them by Judkins, only one for Dylan Sampson, no carries for Jerome Ford. Is that okay? That you're going to just run one guy like crazy? Was it a one-off for one game? Because I think we were all kind of led to believe, hey, it's going to be this Judkins and Sampson combo back there.
I have no problem with that. I mean, Green Bay does pretty much a similar thing, with Josh Jacobs. I don't know, he's been around a lot longer. I don't think 18 carries is too much for Judkins. It's his only second game, so maybe you could, argue there a little bit, but assuming he's where he needs to be physically, and I think 18 carries is fine. I think 22 carries is fine. I think he's clearing away your best ball carrier. Now, could you see more of Dylan Sampson out of the backfield? Yes. We saw Jerome Ford play a lot on third down. He was part of the 2-minute drill offense because he's a better pass protector. And we saw Sampson get run over in Baltimore a couple times. And he's trying, but he's just small. So they got to figure out a role for Sampson because, like we saw week one, he can be effective in space with the ball in his hands. But I'm not sure right now how much of that is him lining up as, the true running back. I think you're better served with Judkins, and then when Judkins needs a break, you go with Jerome Ford.
All right, let's talk about the hero of the game, Andre Schmidt, who ended up, kicking that game-winning field goal yesterday. Just your thoughts on him and his story as we start to hear a little bit more about what was going on in his life before training camp. Which I don't. When did you find that out? When did you hear about it?
Like after the game yesterday?
Yes. Yeah, like no one knew.
And explain.
Yeah, that his mother had passed away 10 days before camp opened.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean.
Yeah. And suddenly she hadn't been sick.
Yeah, and I wonder, some of the vitriol that was out there about him after the Cincinnati game, if that would have been tempered a little bit if people knew. But, I mean, I don't know. Everyone chooses their own path when you lose a loved one, so.
Yeah, I mean, his mom died July 10th of a brain aneurysm. And obviously that's difficult for everyone to deal with, anyone to deal with. And then I think you're right about week one. If people had known that, and Kevin Stefanski, I think, referred a couple times like he's been going through some stuff, but didn't elaborate, right? And I do think it plays into the Browns' decision to keep him. If you know a guy who's been dealing with all these things, maybe you give him a little grace week one. And I would hope that if fans knew that, there would have been more grace given to Schmidt. And, I don't know why it wasn't known. Did he want to keep it a secret? He felt like after the game, he talked about it pretty openly.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that was something everyone would have been better served knowing. But it's just such a good redemption story for Schmidt and the Browns stick with him, and good for them for sticking with him. And then he makes all his kicks week 2. It doesn't really matter. They get blown out. And then to come out, and yesterday he said, I didn't kick until the fourth quarter. Then he has to come out and he kicks field goal, extra point, and then the 55-yarder to win the game. Just good for the kid. And I know his teammates are so happy for him. And they had his back the whole time, and part of that's probably, the mom situation. But he got great support when he missed the kicks against the Bengals. And then to see his teammates mob him at midfield yesterday, it was really a feel-good moment. And, the kid's got a big leg. It was a 55-yarder that was good by a lot. So, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but, it'd be nice if the Browns found their kicker, right? Because they've been looking for one that could stick for more than a year and a half for a long time.
Since Phil Dawson, right? It seems.
Yeah, pretty much.
It seems. So you've had 3 really, really, really good defensive efforts. You're going to need good defensive efforts in the weeks ahead because, man, you've got another good offense against Detroit. In theory, another good one against Minnesota. Carson Wentz seemed to calm things down up there. Can this defense keep playing at this level, Scott?
I think it can. I don't know if it's realistic to think, it's going to be 230 yards a game for 17 weeks. That's asking a lot. But I'll tell you what, Green Bay is really good offensively. And so is Baltimore, and so is Cincinnati with Joe Burrow. And the Browns' defense played great in all 3 games. So I don't think it's unreasonable to expect this defense to play really solid. And I keep going back to the takeaways. That's the next step. Like going into yesterday's game, I said the only way the Browns win is if the defense either scores or sets them up on a really short field. And that's wound up what happened. And I think that's going to be necessary more often than not, especially with, unless the offense figures something out, which we'll see if they do. And I know there's optimism. Joe Flacco thinks they can, but for right now, that's not happening. So this defense has to play like it did and then make another big play or two to change the game. And they came close on that fumble, right? They wound up getting a blocked field goal, but Devin Bush gets the ball out. Whether or not the Browns recovered it, we don't know. But there was another chance for them to make a huge play on defense. And I think that's what could separate this unit, because I think it's as good as anybody in the league. But if you start turning over and turning that into points, that's where it can rise to the next level.
Scott, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, folks.
Scott Petrak, Chronicle Telegram, brownzone.com. Go read his work. Does a phenomenal job, as we all know.